What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger, episode 25 now. Yes, we're 25 episodes in, which means we're definitely towards the middle of the show. And I'll tell you right now, this was probably one of my favorite episodes so far. I love this episode. There were so many really cool things about it. It was definitely a good way to kind of give people a little bit of a refresher about some of the characters, but also it did a lot of really great things as a whole. I'll get to it obviously in this review, but I just wanted to give you guys that heads up that I just enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was really great. The episode is called the Planet Talky, the Boy's Determination, and the Boy's Determination is referring to Kotaro, and we'll get into the significance of that as I talk about this episode. And I actually have a computer in front of me because there was a lot, I took a bunch of notes because a lot of things happen this episode in a very short amount of time, but because there's so many things, it's just really cool. And I'll explain what I mean by it's kind of a reminder of what enemies have happened. You'll see, and also characters that have been seen in the show. You'll see what I'm talking about as I get into it, but it's a really cool episode. For starters, what ends up happening is that the Kyurangers do explain that they're having to go to Planet Talky, which is where they have to go to go and get the Horiglome Kyotama to travel to the past to find out why exactly, why is Daramaj still alive. So what ends up happening is that they do end up finding their way to the Planet Talky, and they end up learning that apparently the Planet Talky is organized like a clock, and what happens is that they actually see right when they get there, that Spada and Raptor are fighting Tetsu, the Vice Shogun, and the others join. So all 12 of them are fighting, which is amazing, but it's really early, so they're all fighting, and then eventually, after getting into a battle, Tetsu does leave them, and they then end up plotting their path around the planet, and they realize that the planet's organized like a clock, and the thing is that they have to unlock 12 keys located at different locations around the planet. If they unlock all the 12 keys within a day, then they will be able to get the Horiglome Kyotama, which will allow them to travel to the past. If they don't do it, then all the keys will reset and they'll have to start all over again. So what ends up happening is that you may think, okay, well, it's just 12 keys, no big deal. And in fact, what ends up happening fairly quickly is that Lucky ends up finding the first key, and that key actually leads to him summoning forth from his mind a memory. And that's the thing, each one of them gets a memory shown, whether it be an enemy or someone that's related to them or someone that they were friends with or something else. It all depends on the character. So for example, with Lucky, he ended up having to fight Aerodrome, the enemy that was their first enemy that they fought at the very beginning of the season. So that was pretty crazy to see him for a short time. He didn't talk at all, but it was just kind of cool to see him, just because it's that's a throwback to the very, very, very start of the show. So yeah, that was cool. On top of that, we got Scorpio returning to fight Stinger, which is cool. And again, it's just a memory, it's an illusion, it's not real, but at the same time, it's real enough to the point that they could actually hurt you. But you get my point. It's not like it's the real thing. He's still dead. Then on top of that, we see that Gonzi, the enemy that Hammy fought on Eris's planet, appears to fight Hammy. And then we end up seeing... I'm trying to actually double check right now. What was it? I know that Spada ends up fighting Madako, and Tsurugi ends up fighting Kiervo, the enemy that we saw in the past. Not the enemy, the friend of Tsurugi from the past. And in each case, they, for example, Lucky, he actually has the solar mode ability that he uses to take out Aerodrome, which he didn't have when he fought Aerodrome originally, and their battles are fairly short. And then what ends up happening is that we end up learning about the others that they have to fight different opponents. So, for example, I believe Garo ends up having to fight the princess dress-up uniform that he had. So he ends up having someone else dress as the princess version of himself, and it's him in a princess costume that, like in episode 14, which is personally one of my least favorite episodes ever. But yes, that he does end up having to fight himself in that costume. I'm trying to remember now what else was there. Then there was what do you call it? Then what also ends up happening is that Lucky, Hammy, and Stinger quickly make way with destroying their memory versions of enemies. Sho ends up fighting Big Bear because he was his master, but he doesn't actually fight him, and that's the thing. Sometimes they don't fight. Like Garu, Lucky, Hammy, and Tsurugi, and obviously Spada definitely had to fight. And we'll get to more of them, but like Sho actually just ended up hanging with Big Bear and sipping tea, and then eventually they do end up like turning his key. But another example would be what do you call it? Balance and Naga, who actually don't have to fight anyone. Like they're the one example where they don't fight anyone. What ends up happening is that they end up turning a key, but they ended up talking to each other about how, like, Naga feels that he still hasn't really grasped the idea of emotions and everything, and he feels like he needs to change. And it's interesting. And that's something that actually kind of goes into what the future episode episode 26 will be like, because that one is supposed to explain things, and we'll get into what I mean by that at the end when I talk about the preview for episode 26. But anyway, then we end up seeing Champ, who ends up having to fight some Endeavors, which a memory form of Professor Anton is controlling. So they ended up taking out those, and the thing is that Stinger and Tsurugi actually end up helping out Champ so that he doesn't feel so upset, because when he sees his master, he's like he's overstruck by emotion. He can't take it in, and it's a really hard thing for him. At the same time, we do end up seeing that Raptor, in her case, she actually has to deal with denying proposals from Tsurugi, Lucky, Spada, and I believe Sho. Which Sho is kind of like the oddball of the group, because it's like, since when has Sho ever shown any love interest, and since when has she ever shown any love interest in him? Yeah, I don't get that one, but I guess they wanted to have a fourth one, even though he isn't human, but that's the other point. Probably they wanted to have one that wasn't human that would make sense based off of the characters, and Sho probably is the most logical of the bunch, but it's just interesting to me. I'm trying to remember what else there was. Eventually, Spada does end up joining Garu, Lucky, and Hammy and taking out Madako, which Madako actually summons multiple forms of herself, because if you remember, every single time she gets destroyed, another form of herself tends to be formed, although we do know that she was completely destroyed, but it's all the different forms of her appear, and yeah, that ends up happening. Eventually, Kotaro has to face his mother, and yes, in her case, he doesn't fight her, but it's more of like he has the ability to turn the key to do what he's supposed to do. But the thing is that when he sees his mother, he sees that when he turns the key, she begins to disappear, and he doesn't feel like he wants to lose her yet. So at that point, he decides against it, and then we end up seeing Sho drinking tea and all that stuff, and eventually Champ and Stinger end up defending Kotaro. Champ, Stinger, and Tsurugi end up fighting, protecting Kotaro while he goes and turns the heat, but he doesn't want to, and he ends up running off after dealing with Tetsu for a little bit. And Kotaro explains that he doesn't want to lose his mother. He's not ready. He doesn't feel up to it, but at the same time he knows that he has to do this to save the world, and he really shows a sense of maturity. And that's the thing that I like about him, even though he's a kid, which usually the kids for these shows, when you end up having a major ally kind of kid, or a kid that is just really involved in the show, typically they drag the show down and make it boring. Because he is a Kyuranger and because they actually make him show maturity and show that he has to deal with these serious conflicts, it means a lot more. I forgot to also mention that originally his mother did pass away, and that's the most important thing to note from this. Seeing his mother, she was dead. She gave birth to his brother Jiro, but she never really got to know his brother. And this was something that was, very hard for him. He was a very young boy, probably 10 or 11 years old, and he's having to face his mother after she had passed. So it's kind of hard for anyone that's that age to really take that in and be able to just turn the key and just let her go. So that obviously creates a problem for her. But eventually, Raptor does end up helping Garu and Hami take out Madako, I believe, and at least tries to take her out. But also, what ends up happening is that Madako does end up appearing before Tetsu, and that's when all the Kyurangers appear again. This time, what ends up happening is that half the team takes out Madako with some awesome finishing moves. And that's the one thing I want to say. The music for so many of the recent episodes has been amazing. I love the music, and I mean, a lot of the Japanese music that they tend to do for some of the more intense battle scenes are usually really good, and that's true in a lot of recent seasons, but I mean, I loved it. On top of that, the other half ended up trying to battle Tetsu, and eventually all the Kyurangers come together to do the ultimate all-star crash attack, which is their finisher from all 12 of them, which leads to Tetsu turning big, and then the Kyurangers summoning Hyutamajin. I forgot to mention also that Kotaro and all of them transform, and he says to his mother, "Watch me as I do this." And the thing is that all of them transform, they all fight, and then eventually they go into Hyutamajin, and this time, rather than it just being Tsurugi and Lucky, it is all 12 Kyurangers fighting together as one giant mecha. Last time they were using Hyutamajin, but this time it was all of them, which led to Tetsu actually getting destroyed for real this time. Obviously, last time he was protected by an Endeavor that was actually really powerful, but this time, they actually took out Tetsu for good. And as far as things go, I'm just trying to make sure that I don't forget anything here. They do use the Ursa Major form. What else is there? When they summon their Voyagers, they also end up separating from Hyutamajin at one point to attack a bunch. And also, what ends up happening is that Kotaro finally gets to turn the key and say goodbye to his mother, which she ends up giving her a hug, and she disappears, and he finally shows that, he's able to live with the past and, not have to, now being able to confront his mother and not feel regret or distaste or feeling upset over the fact that he had to turn the key and let his mother go. Anyway, all that ends up happening, and Kotaro ends up receiving the Kyotama, which allows them to travel to the past, and then we end up, and then it's given to Tsurugi, which he'll use to go and find what actually happened and why is Don Armage still alive. At the same time, we do end up seeing the two Vice Shogun that we had only kind of seen before, but we didn't know their names, and we just kind of had an idea of what they looked like. And their names, if you're wondering, are Kukaruga and Akaban. Kukaruga is the male Vice Shogun that of the two that were left over, and the female one is Akaban, which she almost looks kind of like what's her name? She looks like the what's her name in Japan? In America she was Poisandra, but you know who I'm thinking. I'm sure some of you might remember who I'm thinking of, but because she has like a heart look to her almost, but it's a little bit more monster-like rather than just a simple heart shape for like the headpiece. But anyway, yeah, those are the two, Kukuruga and Akaban. And from there, the episode basically ends after, like, Don Armage basically says to the two of them that they must go and deal with the Kyurangers. And then we end up seeing the summary the preview for the next episode, which is actually pretty interesting because the next episode is going to introduce the Ophiuchus metal form, which is Silver's metal form where he is turned evil. And from what the preview basically hints at is that it looks like Naga is going to be offered by Akaban, the female vice shogun, the ability to unlock his emotions if he listens to her. But at the same time, if he listens to her and unlocks them, then he'll be turned evil, and he gains this metal form, which makes him look dark and has him having like a tattoo of the eye symbol that he has. That whole entire snake eye symbol that he uses and all that. And he looks like he's going to become evil. Again, we don't know anything for a fact. We don't know if it's going to be a one-episode thing or multi-episodes, but we do know that they are making that repaint for him for the Saiza Blaster, which they're going to be releasing probably next week as a toy. So, on stores in Japan, and will probably be something you can buy online if you're interested. So if you are interested in seeing Naga turn evil, that would be interesting. And personally, Naga is one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character from the show, so I'm definitely curious about it. And he looks awesome. If you see the preview images for him, he looks so cool, and I can't wait to see how it's going to turn out, especially since now we're done with Tetsu, and now we're going to move on to Akaban. And I don't know if Kakuruga is going to be fighting alongside Akaban, or if it's going to be Akaban for now and then eventually Kakuruga. We'll see what happens. It's a hard name for me to say, Kakuruga. I'm like, how do you say that? But Akaban's fairly easy. Anyway, I'm just curious about the episode as a whole. The preview just basically is showing, them having to deal with that situation, and also it looks like it's going to be another episode where the 3 mechas are going to be used, I guess. So I think at least that the 3 different megas, like Ryoteo, Kurano, and Whole Voyagers, like a mecha, will be used. I'm forgetting the name right now, but anyway, the point is that we'll be seeing that soon. And just as a whole, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I love to know your guys' opinions. Did you enjoy this episode? What did you think of all these former villains, and also just characters in general that were good in some cases, or memories appearing? Was this exciting for you? Was this cool? I appreciate it a lot because it wasn't even a clip show. It was more like, here's a way to bring back these characters, and in some cases it was a positive situation, in some cases it wasn't, but it was all around interesting, and it was cool because it was a good way to utilize all 12 Kyurangers in some way, which was pretty appreciative in my opinion. So I love to know your guys' opinions. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next videos. Until then, guys, I'm Crazy Summer 1, and goodbye, guys.